Hi, this is Mark Tucker,
Hi, it's Alan Furstenberg here, and we are Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Welcome, Alan,
Welcome, Mark. How are
to
you
another
doing?
week. I'm doing fine.
It's been a week, all right.
Yeah,
It's been a pretty good week for me. I'm
yeah,
doing okay.
yeah. I'm doing well too. I had this song stuck in my head all day today, which is kind of a little
No,
cheerful, happy
don't
song.
don't tell me
I'm not gonna tell you. I won't tell you.
no.
But if you see me going like this during this, then I'm like thinking of the song again.
Okay, fair enough.
So, hey, some cool stuff's happened out of the Alexa side of things, and it's been something that I've done for a while, but I really couldn't talk about, and now I can finally talk about it.
No, wait, really? It's you mean widgets are here?
Widgets are here.
Amazing.
There is a lot to a lot going on with widgets, and it's generally available, and it'll be interesting to see what people start coming up with.
Yeah, very cool. So we've talked about it a little bit before, but
Mhm.
let's kind of give a quick recap, I guess. What are they and where are they available?
Okay, so widgets are little UI worth of functionality that hangs out on your Echo Show device. If you have an Echo Show 15, you can pin those to what's called the favorites panel, and they can be always available. On older or smaller size screened Echo Show devices, there is a kind of a swipe out widgets panel that you can get access to them. I don't know all the different devices that support widgets at this point. Echo Show 15, 10, 8, probably not 5 at this point.
Okay.
Um, but you can use them for whatever. It could be like a little reminder of something, kind of a teaser of something that's going on in your skill to get somebody back into the functionality of your skill. It could be some just kind of fun thing that's out there, like I did a magic 8 ball widget. The skill behind it doesn't really do anything, but the widget can hang out, and you can tap and shake the ball and get some sort of a prediction on what's going to go on, or how help you make a decision with what you're doing. So it could you could tap a button on the widget and it could launch your skill. You could tap your button on the widget and have it do something else. You can surface data from outside systems on your widget. So there's lots of different things that you can use your widget for.
Very cool. So it's both an input and an output,
Yes,
and it's passively output. You don't need to do anything, and it'll do stuff. It'll update the screen.
yes.
Very cool. Okay. So now the big question: as developers, how do we do it?
Oh, there's a lot to it. But maybe the first thing that I want to make sure that you understand is that a widget is always associated with a skill.
Okay.
So, in the case of the show widgets that I've got, there's you would launch the skill and it would say, "Hey, go use the widgets on your Echo device." So the
So
skill doesn't necessarily have to do anything, but it has to be there. That's kind of the package deployment mechanism for widgets that has to be associated with a skill.
okay.
And you can have up to 5 widgets per skill.
Okay. When you say you can have up to 5 widgets per skill, you the
As a
user, you the
developer,
developer. Okay.
you could package up 5 different widgets or 5 versions of a widget with your skill, and they can get deployed at the same time.
Okay.
And then there's a widget gallery where you can go and you can see the list of all the different widgets that are available. I think it's currently in the 40s is the number of widgets that are available. And if you've got multiple widgets in your skill, then they just show up. They don't have to go looking for them right now. It's just one master list, and you don't even have to have used the skill before. And so that could be a way of discovering
Okay.
skill functionality by going through the widget.
So that's
marketplace.
interesting. I know
yeah.
when we talked about this last time, we kind of, I expressed a concern that that wasn't going to scale. Have they improved that? From the look on your face, I don't think so.
I haven't seen anything yet, and you know, it's not like I'm going to hear when they're going to modify that. But at some point, you know, if we were to, if Alexa developers were to run out and start making widgets for their skills, I could easily see in a matter of a few months where you could have 100 widgets. And at what point does the current
Does that screen start getting really clogged?
yeah, so you can define metadata that goes along with your widget. So there's an image, kind of almost like a screenshot of your widget. Give it a name, give it a description, some keywords. So there is some hint at the ability to be able to maybe search by keyword. So that will be interesting to see where that progresses.
Okay. And I know when we talked about it last time, you kind of said that at the time you couldn't talk, there were things you couldn't talk about.
Yeah.
But you said one of the things you could was that widgets were essentially APL.
Yes. So the UI for your widget is APL. There are some I guess differences to it, just some slight differences. For example, they don't want you to show videos in your widget. So video player functionality is not available on widgets. They've created some additional, there's a standard pager control where you can have a page of information and then swipe to get to the next page. They've added a couple of different additional controls that are, you know, kind of pager-like, that have a specific kind of swipe functionality or zoom in functionality that matches kind of the aesthetic of what they've built for widgets. So you can use those new components. So it's pretty much the APL that you know and love or are about to learn, right? And with just a few small caveats on some things that are slightly different or things that aren't supported in the case where that APL is hosted as a widget. And typically, because a widget is like less functionality than maybe a full-blown APL, typically I keep it separate from the APL that would be available inside of the skill. So I've got my skill APL and I've got my APL that's for my widget, and I keep those separate.
That makes sense. And certainly, I mean, you can, do something like, if they touch the widget, then it opens up the full skill, correct?
Yeah.
Then it invokes the skill. Okay.
Yeah.
And brings up the full APL page. So that's a good way to, serve as a notification, for example, that there's a new video. But when they touch it, then the video, then it opens up and the video starts playing.
Yeah.
Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. So for people familiar with developing skills already, I guess what's different here? Because APL is APL.
Yeah.
What are the new bits?
What's the new stuff what are you gonna have to learn new to add widgets to your skill? Is that the part, is that kind of the question you're asking, or?
Not quite, but let's start with that, sure.
Okay. So when you kind of, just to recap, when you're deploying a skill, you've got the language model, that's like, these are the things that you can say. You've got the skill manifest, which defines the information about how does this get surfaced in the skill store. So this is the name of the skill, and this is the description and some keywords that go along with it. Plus, you can put it in a specific category. So, and then some just different settings as far as which permissions your skill is going to use. So that's all part of the skill manifest. And then you've got your code. So you build and deploy your language model. You deploy your skill information to the Alexa console, and you deploy your code at some webhook endpoint, or it could be hosted wherever. Typically, if it's Alexa and it's only Alexa, it's going to be Lambda. So those are kind of the main portions. The things that you're going to need to add to that is there is a separate manifest for the widget itself.
Okay.
So that's going to tell you, like, what's the name of the widget, what's the keywords, here's the description, where is the APL document that is the widget.
Well, that's
and
interesting. So your skill doesn't actually return that APL document. That's a document that needs to be defined and is specified in the manifest.
Yeah, so you define
Interesting,
where
okay.
yeah, so yeah, in the case of a typical skill, you'd launch your skill, and then the launch event would say some sort of a welcome message, and you'd send a directive back saying, here's the APL document to show at the same time that you're talking about, welcome. But a widget is different because you can install and uninstall a widget, at any point, right?
Without invoking the skill.
Without invoking the skill. So it's a different experience. It's hosted. It's, in essence, when you deploy it, it's going to be deployed someplace else.
Okay.
So that's the first thing, is that you need to, well, the first thing is you kind of need to figure out why you want to create a widget, right? What's the functionality? But let's assume that you've done that. You've got a great idea. This is a perfect use case for a widget. And so now you create your manifest for your widget, and you create your APL page that goes along with that widget APL, right? So the UI.
Okay.
Now there's the document, and there's also the data, and this is the same in this case. This is the same for both, whether it's APL for your skill or APL for a widget. You can separate like text. You can have a separate file that has it's just a JSON file that has key value pairs, arrays, and you can put values in there. You could do that because if maybe you want to localize this and have one file for one language, another file for another language, or maybe you just want to build and do some basic data binding. But that data is static.
Is it static across all users of your widget, or does each
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess what the point I'm trying to make is that there is a way in APL before widgets happen that you could separate your document with your data. That's still available for widgets.
Okay.
So you still have that separation, and it solves a very specific purpose, which is just separating out your data from the code, so you can change the data, reuse it, different things like that. But there are some additional ways in APL to create like dynamic JSON. That's not available for widgets. There's a whole other data source feature that is specifically widgets, that's API based primarily.
Okay. So this is the exciting part to me, I think.
Yes.
And this is what they refer to as so in a skill, if you're launching an APL page, you can just include you can include multiple data documents.
Yeah.
And those get read in, and those can be dynamic because your skill can dynamically create JSON. But you don't have that part of it for a widget. You do have this thing they call the data store.
Yes.
Okay. This sounds really cool to me. So let's talk about the data store.
So kind of in some way, think about the data store as a cache on your device, kind of like a browser cache. So there is an API where you can send specific commands, things like I'm adding a value, or I'm setting an object property, or I'm updating a list of values.
When we say API, we mean like a web API that any service can call. This is not something that is inside APL. You can call it from a Node.js server. You can call it from, if you've got something running Python or Java or whatever.
If you got some like I don't know, like you're a restaurant and you've got some order management system and you want to be able to like give somebody an update as their pizza's being made, some other system, you could do that. Now, this data, when you call this API, so this API, like you said, could be called from some other backend system. This API could also be called from your skill. So you could be doing something in your skill, and it could cause something to update in your widget as well. There's right. You could like if you were to, you could open up your skill and you could say, you know, set my background to red, and it could then send an API call setting the key of widget background color to a value of red, and your widget could be listening for those changes. And because you've used data binding to bind to that data store in your document, then it will just update. And it's just since it's been data bound, then whenever the value behind the scene changes, then the data binding gets updated and it will change your background color to red on your widget.
I feel like this is one of the things about APL that is probably its most powerful feature that is least well understood, because there are so few. It's different enough from how core HTML, JS, CSS technology works. But if you're used to things like React or other reactive components like Vue,
like some sort of SPA framework, then it's very much like that.
You're just changing a value somewhere, and suddenly wherever that value got used, it changes. And that's, and you don't need to think about it. It just, everything that depended on this value suddenly is now on this new value. And one of the elements that I related to a lot is using Firestore or the Firebase real-time database. When you're listening for update events, you can go change that database somewhere else, and every client that is listening to that change suddenly gets the update and can react to it. The big difference here is that the widget APL combines those two notions into one. So I've got, something that that's updating the data store, and it just gets reflected on my screen automatically.
Right.
And that's disturbingly powerful.
Well, and that the fact that it could be some other system, you could have periodically things happening and then something happens with the system, and you call this API and say, I'm updating this data. And now what you're really saying is I'm updating this skill for this particular data store, which could be an object which has a value, and the value is data bound. So you can get really specific. Now, the question is like, when I call this API, how does it know? Because really, in the end, think about it sending this information from your backend system all the way reaching down to your device. And saying, here's this little tiny database cache on your device that's for this skill. Oh, we can name multiple of these little database caches. And so now I want you to reach into this specific one, and then you can make an update. Now, what's interesting is that you can update that value. Well, there's two ways of doing it. You can say, I want to update this for the user. So then it actually looks down and says, what are all, because I could have multiple devices that have the same widget installed, and it's going to say, oh, for this user, what are the widgets that are installed for this skill for this user? And it goes and updates those. Or if you want it, if there is a way that when you call your update, you could say, I want to update a very specific instance of my widget. So you could actually go to a specific device. It's not really a well-known fact, but you can install the same widget multiple times on the same device. So you could technically update one of those two widgets to a specific value.
Right. Okay. And this actually gets to a similar, I guess, a related. So the data store is awesome. I think this is one of the biggest things about widgets, like I said. And in fact, it really kind of bothers me that there's not an equivalent feature for a skill.
There's not, but I don't know, some conversations and channels I've been in, I've thought, well, could we not use it for a skill?
What do you mean?
You should try it.
Okay.
They're not saying that you cannot not use it. Or
okay.
So yeah.
Because I mean, one of the things that I tried doing at one point was because you can send back another, you can send back like a data directive normally, but you can only send back a data directive if you also are sending a APL document directive. I really just want to send back a data directive and keep the same document on the screen. I don't need to reload the document. I just want to rebind some data. And it sounds like you're hinting at I may be able to do so.
It's undocumented and it's been untried, as far as I know.
Okay.
But there were some theoretical conversations that they're not locking it down so you can't, or at least they didn't a couple of months ago when I was talking to this person. So
okay, so you heard it here, something to try.
Something you're kind of interesting. You might want to try out and see what happens.
Okay, but so the previous conversation also kind of raised another point. You can install the same widget multiple times on one device. And on the surface, that doesn't seem like there are too many uses for that.
Yeah.
But can you configure each one to behave slightly differently? Like, for example, and this would be the hypothetical example I'd come up with. If I had a stock ticker widget where it showed me the current price and whether it's up and down on the day, I might want 3 or 4 of those if I'm following 3 or 4 different stocks.
Yep.
But I'd want some way to configure each one so they're different.
Yes. So there are 2 strategies that you can do for that. The weather skill that I'm using,
weather is another great example. Again, you want to see the location.
Is using a pager, and so you can have 2 pages on that widget that are 2 different locations. So that's one, and that might be the easier way to solve this, because there's only, like on your Echo Show 15, there's only so many spots that you've got a widget. So there'd have to be like a really good reason why you would want to have multiple widgets.
Well, like I said, if I wanted, well, I mean, I can think of a bunch of reasons. If I want a world clock equivalent, so that not only do I see the time here, but I also see the time in Arizona, and I see the time, for, Europe, because those are, so that's one, or whatever time zone I want. I just want widgets to show me, to have a bunch of time zones if I'm willing to sacrifice that real estate. Or same thing for weather. Same thing for I want, to show multiple stocks and not have them flipping between them. I just want, to see these widgets with these 3 stocks.
Yeah,
sure,
I've always thought
half my screen. I don't care.
Yeah, I always thought it would be interesting because it's a 2 rows, 3 columns. What if you were to take each of those? You know how you kind of you can do a multi-monitor display and have something go across multiple monitors? I always thought it would be interesting if you could have multiple widgets and each of them have assigned, okay, this is number 1, number 2, number 3, whatever, and you can configure them, and then when it updates, it would update all of them, but you could see a different portion of a bigger picture or something. I don't know. What it would be.
No, I got it.
Yeah. So I'm just like, or I don't know, I thought it would be cool, like you could have multiple widgets that would be different UIs from like the Star Trek computer, right? And then you could put those widgets together and kind of make a bigger dashboard. But one of them is showing the starship like rotating 360 degrees, showing different diagnostic stuff that's happening. Another one's like the warp drive, power fluctuation. I don't know, but you could kind of have, if that's, you wanted to have a little ambiance for your thing, why not? You could do multiple widgets of different things.
Okay, so to get, how would we configure identical widgets to show different things?
So there's a couple of different ideas that I've had about that. Is that when you install a widget, you get a specific instance ID, and the widget knows what that instance ID is. So you could surface that or a proxy ID for that, right? So my idea was to use colors or something like that. So, or colors and numbers. So like if it was on one device, it would be like red one. I don't know. I guess I was thinking of Star Wars, like, gold 2, whatever.
We're flipping between Star Trek and Star Wars here,
I know. I'm flexible. I love them both. So there could be some way that each widget, when it gets installed, gets an ID, and then when you go into whatever it could be a mobile app that configures it, a web app, it could be your skill. You could use that ID, and then it would do the conversion to what the specific instance ID was for your widget, and then it could then send that just to that.
Okay.
So that's one option.
So, okay. What's another thought on this?
So the other thought is that you could, when you're on the widget, because the widget knows what its ID is, you could hit a button which would open up your skill. It could pass that ID to it. So you could there could be like a gear configure. So then when you go into the skill launches up, you see a screen that's now specific about settings for that instance of your widget.
That seems like it makes the most sense.
Yeah.
At least for most use cases. Okay.
Once again, I have not seen anybody do this yet, but I've got lots of ideas about how to do this. But
yeah, I hear you on lots of ideas. And I'll be honest, I'm hopeful that we do see widgets at least get some adoption, because it's this notion of ambient information, providing ambient information that I think is kind of powerful and important.
Yep.
And this is a good way to do so, or could be a good way to do so.
Yeah.
So what else do we need to know about widgets?
Oh, let's see. So we talked about the manifest. We talked about the APL.
And we talked about the data store.
We talked about the data store. We talked about new components. Talked about there are some APL limitations depending on if it's going to be surfaced in a widget or not. Commands like send event. Send event is the primary way that your APL talks to your skill backend.
Okay.
And so there's something that's been changed, because there might be a situation where you want to tap a button on your widget that says launch or something like that. So you want to launch the skill experience. So that would be kind of what you would think your typical experience would be. And so you would use a send event command in your APL for your widget to do that. There is an additional property that you set, and I think one's called standard and the other one is called inline. So standard means you want the widget to do something that kind of takes you out of the widget experience and takes you into a skill.
It takes over the screen.
It takes over the screen. It launches the screen, right?
Okay.
So then, and there's ways that you can process that and treat that just like an intent, or know how to process it. Process the user event on the skill side of things and call the launch, handler or whatever. So there's that. But sometimes you might want to tap something on the screen, and you might want to send information back to the skill, because the skill backend is also the backend for your widget as far as processing goes, without leaving the widget. So like my case with that is the magic 8 ball. I want to tap the magic 8 ball. Now, the list of kind of predictions or comments that happen, that's really just baked into the APL. So there's really no reason to go back to the back end, except for I want to catch analytics. I want to know how many times somebody has tapped, has tapped the button or shaken the ball or whatever. So I use the other type, the inline type of send events, and it still sends it to the back end. The back end kind of just handles it like the back end does. It gets a request, it does some processing, and it gives a result, right? So at that point, it figures out what the command was and writes it out to analytics. In this case, BigQuery, so that we could figure out what's going on.
So the results that it sends back, what process is that on the receiving side?
So a handler. So there's a handler in your skill. There's handlers that are intent handlers.
Okay.
And
no, not on the servers, on the APL side.
Oh, sorry. So what happened? What was your question about the APL
so
side of things?
Your skill handler on the server side.
Yes.
What can it return back that your APL can now do something with? And how does that happen?
So it can't.
Oh, okay.
It can't. It's a kind of a no response.
Okay. Can it send an execute command? Isn't that something skills can do? No,
it's kind of a one-way fire and forget. If you want to respond to something in that case, then that's where you use the data store API.
Okay.
Now, and we didn't talk about what was the magic that wired up. How did the API know that it's sending it to a specific skill? Because if you go into your Alexa console, in your settings, there's a spot where there's like a client ID and a secret that's for your skill. And so you have to bake that into your skill, environment variables. But there's two API calls that you have to actually make to use this data store API. The first one is an authentication, where it uses that client ID and secret to get a token. And then you can make a call with the token with some, JSON that's the specific commands as far as updating, commands for adding or updating things in the data store itself. And so then that's how it knows, and you could use those same client ID and secrets in some other backend system that makes those same API calls, and that's how it knows that it's going to call. So basically, it's calling some API that Amazon's hosting, and it can resolve then how to talk to your specific device and sends that down to your device.
Okay. So is there anything else we need to know about building widgets?
Oh, other than once it's built, you can use the developer console to kind of push a version of it down to your device to kind of play around with it and test it out. And then when you actually you just do the normal certification process for certifying a skill, and then any widgets that the skill has goes through that process. Probably takes a little bit longer if it's got widgets, or at least initially it will. And then once the skill's been deployed, officially published, then you should be able to go right into your widget gallery and find the widgets that went along with your skill.
Okay.
Should be open to everybody.
So it's very exciting sounding.
Yeah, there's lots, a lot of exciting things to do. It was fun months ago when I really first got access to it, and there's quite the learning curve, and things have gotten easier, and things have changed. So I've got to update some of my code at some point when I publish new changes to it. But so it was really fun to do it, and I think there's lots of different ideas of how people can use it.
I have so many ideas that I really wish I had time to work on any of them. It's Really, I mean, they're on my to-do list, but there's so many items on my to-do list these days. It's absurd.
Yes, it is a little crazy.
But I would love to hear what some people are thinking to do with these widgets. And as always, that you can reach out to us on Twitter, LinkedIn, comments below. You can find both of us on the Alexa Slack.
Yep.
And we'd love to hear what you're talking about.
Yeah, and if you got some questions, you're kind of like stuck, or you're like it takes a little while to wrap your head around these different concepts. So if you're new at it and just trying out widgets for the first time, you can usually find me on Twitter. Just ask questions and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can and see if I can help you get unstuck.
And as always, we're going to be talking about this more, I have a funny feeling, on another episode of Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Take care, Alan.
You too, Mark. Thanks for sharing all this.
You're welcome.